Howdy folks, today's lore episode is on the creatures known as Wampas. Existing at the top of the Hoth food chain, the Wampa was a violent alpha predator that had no natural enemies, except for other Wampas. As a carnivorous reptile mammal, its chief prey was the tauntaun, but the Wampa was also an opportunist hunter, and, if particularly hungry, would attack almost anything that seemed to offer a source of food. Now, the sparseness of any wildlife on Hoth meant that each Wampa needed a large hunting ground in order to sustain itself, which was believed to be the chief reason why the creatures lived alone or in small family-based groups, each one defending their enormous territory fiercely. Now, Wampas hunted using their fangs and claws. One powerful blow of the creature's forearm was enough to fell the largest prey, while its bite was deadly. However, as Wampus preferred fresh meat, they would always try to stun rather than kill, aiming to keep victims alive but unconscious until it was ready to feed. Now, perfectly camouflaged against the snow, a Wampa was able to walk on 2 or 4 legs, stalking its quarry until it was close enough to make a rush attack. Rising on its hind legs, the Wampa would take a last sighting of its target as it sprang forward in a deadly pounce, and as soon as the prey was disabled, the Wampa would then drag it back to its lair. Now, larger creatures such as tauntauns were often impaled through the ankles on ice stalactites to keep them immobile. Now, alternatively, Wampas often froze their prey to the cavern ceilings by using their hot breath to melt the ice around the victim's legs, which were moistened with saliva. Now, Wampas also sometimes used their saliva as an anesthetic, and this helped to keep the prey comatose until they wished to feed. Now, at times, several creatures were kept in this way, for although a single tauntaun could sustain one Wampa for a considerable time, a Wampa family group needed a substantial supply of meat, as a female might give birth to up to 3 young at a time. Now, nesting Wampas would shed their guard fur and gather it to line their caverns. Now, although opinion about this is divided as to whether it's constituted intelligent behavior or just simple animal instinct. But what was certain was that Wampa mothers were extremely protective of their young, who were nursed until they were able to sustain themselves on meat alone. Now, during this period, even males risked dire consequences if they came between a mother and her cubs. The Wampa's curving horns were an indication of their age. The horns began to appear with the onset of puberty and continued to grow larger as the animal aged. On reaching maturity, each young Wampa would set out to claim its own territory, for which it had to compete with other Wampas, including members of its own family. And the competition for a relatively small number of prey animals formed a natural limit to the numbers of Wampas on Hoth, keeping these snow monsters relatively scarce. Now, the majority of information on the ice caves in which these huge, shaggy Wampas lived came from just 3 sources. The first was the testimony of the Jedi Luke Skywalker. During the Rebel Alliance's occupation of Hoth's Echo Base, Luke was attacked by one of the Third Horrors while on patrol astride a tauntaun. He awoke to find himself suspended upside down from the ceiling of an icy cave. But Skywalker was lucky, and skilled enough, to escape from the grisly end his tauntaun had come to. His experiences were documented while he recovered from his encounter with Darth Vader on Bespin's Cloud City, and proved invaluable to naturalists. Now, the second source of information on the Wampa's lair was a study of safely abandoned sites. Finding an abandoned site was hard enough in itself. Checking it was abandoned was doubly difficult, as the dense fur of the Wampa made it almost invisible to standard thermal scans. Now, having moved in, and possibly even enlarged an existing cavern or former tauntaun dug site, Wampas did not stay long in a lair unless they were raising their young, because they needed to follow the migrating tauntaun herds for food. Now, once inside an abandoned cave, the nature of the Wampa creature's habits became clear. Their ability to suspend still living prey from the ceiling of their caves was well documented, and evidence in the form of footprints or even snapped off preserved feet were discovered frozen into the icy roof. Now, also, blood encrusted projecting ice spikes were testament to the other storage method Wampas used. Wampas were not good housekeepers, particularly the males, and they were solitary by nature and never stayed in a cave for very long. Males' lairs were typically strewn left, right and centre with bones, horns and tattered bits of flesh. Apart from the fur-lined nest in which cubs were born, even the cave of a nursing female was covered in gory trophies. Now, the third source of information on Wampas and their lairs was more unexpected. During the study of ice caverns, field agents from the University of Sambra discovered a thoroughly battered Imperial probe droid. Several of its manipulator arms were embedded in the ice ceiling, and on recovery of the droid's memory, a strange story unfolded. Dropped during the Imperial assault on Echo Base to monitor rebel activity and alert the invaders to any escape attempts, the droid had picked up a group of Tauntaun near a long frozen lake. On investigating the creatures, the probe droid came between a charging Wampa and its prey. The angry Wampa treated the droid as it would any other catch and dragged its battered hulk back to its lair. And as a result, the Sambra staff were able to use the unique and fascinating footage of a Wampa attack and the ice cave and occupant in their lecture programs. And that is the Wampas of Hoth. So if you liked the video, leave a like, let me know what you thought of the video, subscribe for more videos. I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you all in the next one. Later.